A rusted-out 1969 Camaro sold at a rural Pennsylvania auction in 2019 for $4,800. The buyer was a retired machinist with a garage, a budget, and a plan. 18 months later, that same car crossed the block at a Barrett-Jackson event in Scottsdale for $212,000. Same chassis, same serial number. Different story. That is not a fluke. That is a pattern. And the people who understand that pattern are quietly turning $5,000 wrecks into life-changing money, while everyone else scrolls past the listing. Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. If that number, 212,000, already has your attention, stay with me. Hit subscribe so you don't miss where this goes, because what we're about to cover goes deeper than car flipping. This is about timing, psychology, and a market that most financial advisors have never even looked at. Here's the first thing you need to understand. The classic car market is not driven by condition alone. It never has been. It is driven by story, by rarity, by cultural timing, and by the specific decade a specific generation of buyers happens to turn 50. That last part is the engine that runs the entire machine. And right now, that engine is pointed directly at cars built between 1965 and 1985. Think about who has money to spend on collectibles today. Baby boomers are still in the market, but they're aging out. Generation X? The kids who grew up watching those cars on the street, who had posters of them on bedroom walls, who learned to drive in the back seat of one. Generation X is now in their late 40s and 50s, peak earning years, disposable income, and nostalgia that has been building for 30 years. That is the wave, and you can either be in front of it or behind it. But here's where it gets complicated. Not every old car is a gold mine. In fact, most of them aren't. The difference between a smart buy and a money pit is a question of which car, which condition, and what the market will accept. And those three things are almost never what they seem at first glance. Let's talk about the $5,000 entry point, because that number is real. It is not theoretical. Right now, on any given week, you can find solid project-grade examples of first-generation Pontiac Firebirds, mid-70s Ford Broncos, early Datsun 240Zs, and pre-Malay Chevrolet trucks for prices that would have bought you a reliable daily driver 10 years ago. These are not hopeless wrecks. These are vehicles with salvageable bodies, recognizable pedigree, and a name that buyers already know. That matters more than you think. The mistake most first-time restorers make is chasing condition before they chase identity. They find a car that runs, that looks decent, that doesn't have major rust, and they buy it. But they haven't asked the one question that actually determines value at resale. Does this specific car have a community behind it? Because a car without a community is a hobby. A car with a community is an investment. Here's what that means in practice. A 1973 Chevrolet Nova in solid shape might cost you $6,000 to buy and $15,000 to restore. And at the end of it, you have a car worth $22,000 on a good day. The math works, barely. But a 1969 Camaro SS with matching numbers and documented history, you spend the same restoration budget and you're looking at a completely different ceiling. That ceiling is where the money lives. And that's the cliffhanger we need to sit with for a moment, because matching numbers is either the most important phrase in this conversation or the most overused one, depending on who you ask. We'll get to what it actually means for your budget in a few minutes, but first I need to tell you about a market shift that almost nobody in the mainstream financial press has reported on, and it explains exactly why this window of opportunity is open right now, and why it is not going to stay open forever. In 2008, when the global financial crisis wiped out asset prices across the board, classic cars did something unexpected. They held. Not every car. Some categories dropped hard. But the blue chip classics, the ones with racing heritage or cultural significance, either held flat or recovered within 18 months. Hedge fund managers noticed, private equity noticed, and slowly over the decade that followed, institutional money began flowing into the collector car market in a way it never had before. Auction houses like Barrett-Jackson and Nika grew from regional events into nationally televised spectacles with live bidding from buyers in 30 countries. What that did, and this is the part that matters for the $5,000 buyer, is it compressed the top of the market. The truly rare cars, the first-year Corvettes, the original Shelby Cobras, the Ferrari 250s, those went to a level that retail investors can no longer access. But what it also did was create a ceiling effect that lifted values on everything below it. Cars that were once considered second tier suddenly had new buyers because the first tier was priced out of reach. That compression is still happening. And it means that cars in the $5,000 to $15,000 acquisition range, cars that can be restored to a $25,000 to $75,000 finished condition, are exactly where the next wave of value appreciation is sitting. You are not too late, but you are close enough to the edge that the math changes significantly depending on how quickly you move. Now, you'd think at this point someone would have said, okay, so everyone should just go buy old Camaros. Nobody said that, because the execution is where most people collapse. The car is the easy part. The restoration strategy is where fortunes are made or lost, and it is almost entirely misunderstood. Let's talk about what a smart restoration actually looks like at this budget level. The number one rule is do not over-restore. This sounds counterintuitive. You want a $5,000 car, you want it to look like a $200,000 car. But a show-quality frame-off restoration on a car with a $40,000 market ceiling will bankrupt the project before you ever finish it. The restoration cost has to match the car's potential ceiling, and that ceiling is determined before you buy, not after. The buyers who succeed at this understand one concept. Driver-quality restorations outperform show-quality restorations in almost every sub-premium price bracket. A driver-quality car, mechanically sorted, cosmetically presentable, accurate to its original spec, appeals to a massive pool of buyers. It can be driven, insured affordably, shown at regional events, and sold in a weekend with the right listing. A show car sits in a garage waiting for a buyer willing to pay full price or nothing at all. In a market that has any softness, the show car loses. This brings us back to matching numbers, because now you understand the context. A matching numbers car means the engine, transmission, and major driveline components carry the same factory-stamped codes as the vehicle identification
number. It means the car left the factory exactly as it appears today, or as close to it as documentation can prove. And in the collector market, that authenticity carries a price premium that no amount of restoration work on a non-matching car can replicate.
Here is the real-world number. In a study of Camaro transactions compiled from major auction results between 2018 and 2023, matching numbers examples sold for an average of 62% more than comparable non-matching cars in the same condition bracket. 62%! On a $40,000 car, that is $24,000 for numbers that were on the car when it left the factory. That is not skill, that is documentation. And documentation is something you verify before you hand over the money, not after. So what does a winning entry look like? You are looking for a car that has three things: a desirable nameplate, a restorable body without structural rust, and provenance, either matching numbers, original documentation, or a documented single owner history that creates a story a buyer can tell. You are not looking for perfection, you are looking for legitimacy. Because in this market, legitimacy is what commands the premium. The cars that hit all three criteria in the $5,000 to $8,000 range right now, and they do exist, you just have to know where to look, include mid to late 60s muscle cars from the second and third production years, late 70s pickup trucks in non-Rust Belt states, and first-generation Japanese sports cars like the early Z cars and AE86 Corollas, which have gone from cult followings to serious collector attention in the last 4 years. That last category is the one that most traditional collectors are still sleeping on. The AE86, the 1983 to 1987 Toyota Corolla GTS, sold new for under $10,000. It was a lightweight, rev-happy sports coupe that became the foundation of a global grassroots motorsport culture. Today, clean examples are trading between $15,000 and $45,000 depending on condition and provenance. The ceiling is still moving, and the generation that grew up racing these cars is now at the age where they have the money to own one properly. That wave we talked about earlier, it applies here too. Here is the final question this whole conversation is building to, and it is the one that will determine whether you actually profit from what we've covered today. Are you restoring a car, or are you building a narrative? Because the buyers who pay top dollar are not buying metal and rubber. They are buying a story about where the car came from, what it survived, what it represents, and what it says about the person who owns it. The $5,000 car that becomes $200,000 is not just well restored. It is well documented, well photographed, and well presented to an audience that was already looking for exactly that car. The machinist from Pennsylvania understood that. He kept every receipt. He photographed every stage. He documented the matching numbers, sourced period-correct parts, and when the car crossed the block in Scottsdale, it did not just look right.
It told a story that a room full of people wanted to be part of. That is the strategy. The car is the canvas. The story is what sells. Leave me a comment with this. If you had a $5,000 budget today, which car would you bet on and why?
I want to see if your instincts match where the market is actually heading. And in the next video, we're going inside the world of barn finds, cars that have been sitting untouched for decades, and the single detail that separates a barn find worth pursuing from one that will drain your wallet and your patience. You will want to see that one before you make any move.